Hello and welcome to the Animal Enrichment Workshop. Today I'm going to be showing you how to build your own dig box, explaining how it all works and why it could be perfect for any fossicking and foraging species that you might have or work with. So let's get into it.
Alright, so our first step is grinding down or cutting our piece of mesh to size. Once we've done so, there it is, just measuring up how big the little squares are because that's where the frame is going to go around. And so they are marked out on a piece of wood. This is a long piece, so yeah, just cutting however much you need for the size of the box that you're going to make. Instead of using a table saw like I am to get long pieces, you can just use thin pieces of wood that you find at a hardware store, like edging and stuff like that. But I've cut my pieces so they're the width of one of the squares of the metal. So laying it out, getting it all ready to go like so, putting the mesh on top and then putting another layer of wood on and then securing it all together. And that is just the construction of our lid. So once you've done so, pop it all together, you drill your pilot holes, you screw it together and it's good to go. And then you can start the construction of the actual box. So I use 6G 30mm screws. They get through the thickness of the wood enough to grab onto the other side. Obviously just different screws for different thicknesses of wood. Looks a bit chopped up, but sanding it down fixes all that kind of stuff as well. So yeah, once you've done so, you then create a box to fit the size of the lid or the size of the mesh, however big you want it to be. And it's exactly the same sort of deal, pilot holes, screwing it all together and just creating like so. That's how it's all going to go together. And creating this construction of the outer box, and then you can get started on the bottom. So once it's all screwed together, you can use whatever pieces of wood you've got left. I had just offcuts that I'm going to use like that, so it doesn't form a perfect base or flush base, but otherwise there you go. And I lost a bit of footage, but that's how the hinges go in. Just screw them in, obviously pilot holes, screw the hinges, so you've got a lid. And then the last step is just pilot holes and then screwing in your little latch. So you can close and lock it up and the animals, can't get in there. Once you've all screwed it together, you are done. So it's really quick and easy.
Alright, and here we are back with the finished product. So a couple of things, obviously there were parts of the video that didn't work perfectly. Unfortunately, we had a bit of a malfunction there. I was just showing how I was screwing the hinges on, which is pretty easy and self-explanatory for a lot of people. Just drilling, pre-drilling, piloting the holes, screwing the hinges in. So it works like that. Now I showed where I cut these larger pieces of wood for the frame of the box. What I didn't actually show was that this thick bit on top, I have done a thinner piece underneath because two thick bits just would have been too much of a drop before you can get to the actual bottom of the box, and it was going to start to be too deep for the species that I wanted to use it for. They just wouldn't have been able to get to the bottom. Now I could fill out the bottom by putting stuff in there and raising the base, so there's less room until you get to the bottom, but otherwise that's just what I've done with this one. And then in the process, when I finally finished it, realized that I could actually just have this thin outer bit. This is like perfect wood you could get from trellis or something like that. Nice thin piece of wood. But otherwise I was trying to work with what I had because I used a disused pallet or an old pallet I got for free. So I had the thick pieces of wood and I had to cut them in half to get this. Whereas if you just had this thin one and got pre-cut wood already and then put maybe button screws through the top, the edges would have held the metal down onto the wood and you wouldn't have to have the two layers of wood as I do in the top here. But other than that, if you're building it as is, the frame for the lid is really the only thing that is a bit iffy and a bit hard, and mine doesn't look great. It looks a bit all over the shop. It's probably skew with in the camera even as well. So I put the metal, the higher bit up top so the metal goes down a bit lower. And that just ensures that there's less of a gap between the metal and the bottom of the box. But I absolutely love the dig box. So I've seen it used for meerkats and I think coatis with the species, which is awesome. They get their hands in there and trying to pull and grab bits out. I'm sure you could use it for a lot of small primate species, depending on what size of metal mesh you're using as well. So obviously larger mesh you can use for larger species. I've got this for, I was going to use it for like Australian magpies and ravens and pheasant kukels and birds that I've worked with and do work with, because that's small enough to get beaks through to collect pieces of food, but it's not large enough that the head can go through and potentially get stuck. So that's a safety issue that obviously you need to think about. So you can get much bigger ones if you're using, with bigger primates or different animals and that kind of thing. And then I thought potentially this is really good and strong, this metal, but you could make a more soft and bendable one if you're using like plastic trellis for a garden or something like that. You could get a bit more push and give with it, so it could move around a bit more instead of being more firm, if that's something that you're interested in, which is something that I thought about. So the variations that you can do with this, or the versatility of this item, is just as is. It's excellent. You can poke through and grab pieces of food that might be in there. You can load up the box with whatever you want. Stuff like, leaves, corn husks, dirt even. The world is your oyster. Any sort of stuffing and substrate can go in there for hiding different pieces of food and whatnot and that kind of thing. And then if you want to increase the difficulty again, you can, which I've seen, again for meerkats, using a piece of cardboard. So you cut out a sheet of cardboard, get any cardboard box. A lot of like supermarkets or hardware stores give them away, or you could get them from your food packaging and that kind of thing. You could put a piece of cardboard there, and you close up the lid, lock it on. You're going to want to put a carabiner or some type of little D-shackle lock there, which is easy to undo, but the animals can't get in. And then there's going to be the mesh, the cardboard. They have to break through the cardboard to then get into the stuff, increasing the difficulty again, or putting little parcels in there. So a lot of stuff can go on with this, which is absolutely excellent. It's an awesome little thing that you can take out and clean quite easily, and a relatively easy build as well. Other than just getting the piece of metal to the size you want and using an angle grinder, the rest is really can be hand sawn and screwed in quite easily as well, once you've done those pilot holes. So as always, much appreciated that you've watched the video this far. If you have, I really do appreciate it. Happy enriching, and until next time, thank you and goodbye.